Hello, my name is Kathy Strunk, and I'm a psychiatric nurse at Cincinnati Children's Hospital Division of Psychiatry, and I am the Director Educator for the Surviving the Teens program. I go into 25 local high schools talking to teenagers about depression and stressors, coping, and suicide. And today we have with us in the studio Luke Beischel, and he's actually had some experience with this and has gone in and talked with me to other teenagers and has shared his story with parents. Luke,
hi.
How are you today?
Good, how about you?
What we'd like to know, Luke, we'd like to hear about your experience with depression. Would you please share your story with us?
Yes, my story begins in the 8th grade. I took a test to get into St. Xavier High School, and I was one of 3 people to take the test. After I found out that I was one of the 2 people that made it in, my classmates began to ostracize me because they were going to a different high school, and they said, you know, are you too good for us? Are you too rich for us? Do you think you're smarter than us? You're not willing to go with us. You're gonna go try to be different. So they began to not accept me, and that started me to think that I'm not a good person and I can't amount to what they think I should. I only had a couple friends in grade school, and that led to a downward spiral, and I started becoming very depressed, and that I felt as a failure to my family and to my friends. I then began to have thoughts of suicide. I couldn't think of a means that would be quick enough that I wouldn't suffer. So then I began to really scare myself because I soon realized that this is not normal to have these thoughts. So one Super Bowl night, I was at my aunt and uncle's house, and I pulled my mom and dad into a different room, and I said, I don't have the courage to talk to you right now, but I need to talk to you, and we need to have a conversation. And at that point, I was already bawling. So of course they said, no, we need to talk right now. And I said, you know, I'm scaring myself. I'm having thoughts of not wanting to be alive. So then that next week, I went to the school psychologist. You had to get pulled out of class, and you talked to her for half hour maybe. By the second time I went, I decided that I didn't want to be that different person that had to go talk to somebody and had to go get help. So I told my parents and I told her that I was totally fine and that it was over with when it really wasn't. I lived through depression then through the rest of my 8th grade year. Graduation day was obviously a great day for me. I then began, that summer before freshman year, I began to train for cross country. I then started gaining friends, and I could see in myself that I could be accepted by other people. So that definitely brought up my self-esteem, and I think that really drove me to be able to go through freshman year, then meeting people on the rowing team and getting more friends and being accepted at this new school. Then, the beginning of my sophomore year, I obviously didn't study enough of my Latin 1 over the summer for Latin 2. And when I began class, the very first day our teacher went around and pointed at each student and asked them a different Latin question. And that stressed me out a whole lot, and I didn't know how to answer, and I didn't know the answer. And every day he would do that, and we soon had quizzes and tests, and I failed one after the other and couldn't get homework right. So then I had a 46% in that class. Then that brought me again to I'm a failure and I'm not amounting to anything, and there's no way anybody can like me if I have these failing grades and if I'm that kind of person that doesn't do well in school. My family being successful in work and school and having an older sister with first honors at Ursuline and my brother doing well in grade school, I felt like I was the outcast in the family and that I did not amount to that. That brought me down my second spiral of depression, and I then, in about a 2-week span, I had serious thoughts about suicide again. I was completely in my own mind and couldn't look outside at all. I then decided on the night and decided the means because I knew I had a shotgun at our house, and I also knew where the ammunition was. One night when I got home from school, I planned that it was going to be that night, and it ended up being the perfect opportunity because my mom and dad and my sister happened to go coach my brother's soccer practice that night. Since I was home by myself, I went to go clean my room, get everything set in order so there was nothing left messy to leave behind. I then took that shotgun into the backyard. I had that shotgun in my mouth, and the moment before I would have pulled the trigger, I can feel like God grabbed me and said, "What are you doing? Look at your life. Look at these parents that have unconditional love for you. There's nothing that you can do that would make your parents disappointed in you, and they will always love you." At that moment, I became very calm, and for the first time, I could look outside of my own mind. It was the first time I could realize all of a sudden what I was doing and where I brought myself. The day before this night, I went to a well child check. My doctor looked at me in the eye and said, "Have you had thoughts of suicide?" And I looked her straight back in the eye and said, "No." I was completely in my own mind. So to finally hit that point that I could get out and that I'd be able to ask for help. So I dropped the gun there in the backyard, and I went straight inside and called my parents. First, my dad answered on his cell phone, and how I said is I'm scaring myself again. I didn't elaborate on the extent that it went this time. So I then, he said, "Why don't you eat dinner? It could make you feel better." So we hung up. My mom called right after then when my dad told her what happened, and as soon as she answered, I said, "Mom, there's a shotgun in the backyard." That's how much I'm scaring myself. The scream that she gave at that moment is a scream that I would never want to hear ever again. Almost a scream of a mother losing her child. So my dad then, in the car, they were already on their way home, so my dad called the police because they could get there faster than they could. So the police waited for me. My parents came home, and my brother and my sister, and all of them crying, and we were all hugging. I was then taken by ambulance to Cincinnati Children's. In the ambulance, another moment that really I was out of my mind then, and I could realize what I did was when the EMT in the back had to call ahead to the ER and say why they were bringing somebody in. And she was walking and said, "I have a 15-year-old boy who almost shot himself." And at that moment, I was like, wow, I can't believe I just did that, almost did that.